The dust has finally settled on the Southern Series of the 2026 Nations Championship, and for Ireland, it has been a campaign filled with promise, frustration, and plenty of unanswered questions. Under the guidance of head coach Andy Farrell, expectations were once again high as Ireland traveled south to take on three vastly different opponents in the Wallabies, All Blacks, and Japan. While there were flashes of the quality that has made Ireland one of World Rugby's elite nations over the past several years, the tour ultimately exposed several weaknesses that prevented the team from reaching the standard supporters have come to expect. The player ratings released after the tournament paint a clear picture of a squad that fought hard but missed too many opportunities when it mattered most. Some individuals enhanced their reputations with outstanding performances, while others struggled to seize the chances handed to them. Perhaps the biggest takeaway from the tour is that Andy Farrell now has several important selection decisions to make before Ireland's next major challenge. The return of experienced stars, the emergence of unexpected performers, and the inconsistency shown by several established internationals have combined to create one of the most intriguing selection puzzles of Farrell's coaching career. Starting at the back, Hugo Keenan was one of the brightest performers throughout the tour. After an injury nightmare that kept him out of international rugby since March 2025, many questioned whether he could immediately rediscover his best form. The answer was largely yes. Although Ireland's defensive structure conceded 4-try bonus points to both the Wallabies and the All Blacks before half-time in those matches, it would be unfair to place the blame solely on Keenan. Instead, he repeatedly demonstrated why he remains one of the safest fullbacks in international rugby, producing several outstanding try-saving tackles that kept Ireland in the contest against Australia. His eagerness to join attacking movements also paid dividends as he became one of only 2 Irish players to score tries in multiple matches during the series. His rating of 7 reflected a player who looked hungry, energetic, and determined to reclaim his place as Ireland's first-choice fullback. Unfortunately, the story was very different for Jamie Osborne. After enjoying an excellent Six Nations campaign where he comfortably filled the void left by Keenan and crossed for 4 tries, expectations surrounding the young back were extremely high. However, this tour failed to build on that momentum. Used on the wing against Australia before moving back to fullback against Japan, Osborne never looked completely comfortable. His omission from the matchday squad against the All Blacks represented perhaps the biggest disappointment of his season and suggested that despite his earlier progress, Farrell still believes there is work to be done before Osborne becomes an automatic selection. Another fascinating story belonged to Jimmy O'Brien, whose international career appeared to be fading after limited opportunities following the 2023 Rugby World Cup. Few expected him to feature prominently on this tour, but injuries and unfortunate circumstances opened the door. The absence of James Lowe, followed by injuries to Tommy O'Brien and Robert Balogun, suddenly elevated O'Brien from an outsider to a starter in all 3 matches. He rewarded Farrell's faith with energetic performances during the opening games, constantly searching for work around the field and contributing positively in attack. However, his influence faded significantly against the All Blacks, where Ireland struggled to impose themselves offensively. Even so, considering where he stood just months earlier, his tour can still be viewed as a positive step in rebuilding his international career. Speaking of Robert Balogun, injuries once again proved to be his greatest obstacle. Having enjoyed a remarkable return earlier in the year that saw him named the BKT Rising Player of the 2026 Six Nations, hopes were high that he could continue his resurgence. Unfortunately, a niggling injury restricted him to just 1 appearance, and with Ireland spending long periods under pressure against New Zealand, opportunities for the winger to showcase his attacking qualities were extremely limited. Equally frustrating was the campaign of Jacob Stockdale, once regarded as one of the world's most dangerous finishers. His emotional try against Wales during the Six Nations hinted that his career revival might finally be gathering momentum, but that progress stalled against Japan. Instead of reminding everyone why he was once the player of the championship in 2018, Stockdale struggled to make a lasting impression, leaving some observers wondering whether Ireland should instead have handed a debut to promising youngster Zach Ward. In midfield, the experienced Stuart McCloskey entered the tour carrying enormous confidence after arguably the finest season of his career. The powerful centre had transformed himself from a long-time squad player into one of Ireland's most dependable performers. His physical carrying and secure handling remained evident throughout the tour, particularly against the Wallabies, but one costly lapse just before halftime against the All Blacks allowed New Zealand to score a momentum-shifting try that effectively ended Ireland's hopes. That single mistake significantly affected his overall rating despite otherwise solid contributions. Alongside him, Garry Ringrose endured a relatively quiet campaign. His understanding with McCloskey showed glimpses of promise, particularly through a beautifully timed assist that created one of Hugo Keenan's tries, but too often Ringrose struggled to impose himself on games. Ireland's defensive uncertainty also exposed weaknesses that supporters are unaccustomed to seeing from one of the world's most reliable centers. Veteran Bundee Aki perhaps endured the toughest tour of anyone in the back line. Having recently received a one-year contract extension despite limited involvement during the Six Nations, questions had already been raised about the decision. Unfortunately for both player and coach, his appearances from the bench failed to provide the spark Ireland desperately needed. At 36 years of age, Aki looked unable to influence matches in the way he once consistently did, leaving many wondering whether Ireland's midfield evolution may now need to accelerate. Robbie Henshaw also found opportunities difficult to come by after injuries disrupted much of his season. His only start came against Japan, where his commitment and work rate could never be questioned. But by the time Ireland faced the All Blacks, Farrell preferred alternative combinations, underlining just how competitive the midfield battle has become. At fly-half, much of the spotlight naturally fell upon Sam Prendergast, whose return to the starting lineup followed his disappointing removal during the Six Nations. There were encouraging moments, including the pressure conversion that secured victory over the Wallabies, demonstrating impressive composure from the young playmaker. However, those positives were overshadowed by recurring defensive issues. Prendergast continued to miss too many tackles, and his decision-making under pressure occasionally proved costly, most notably an intercepted pass that gifted Australia a crucial try. While there is little doubt about his natural talent, the tour reinforced the belief that his overall game still requires significant development before he can consistently guide Ireland against the world's very best teams. Ironically, one of the biggest winners from the series may have been injured fly-half Jack Crowley, whose absence highlighted exactly what Ireland were missing in terms of defensive reliability, tactical control, and attacking authority. Looking at the bigger picture, Ireland's campaign was ultimately defined by inconsistency. They demonstrated resilience by defeating the Wallabies, yet struggled to cope with the relentless intensity of the All Blacks, while even the performance against Japan lacked the authority many expected. Throughout the series, there were repeated examples of missed tackles, defensive disconnects, and attacking opportunities that slipped away at crucial moments. Those shortcomings explain why so many player ratings remained firmly in the middle range rather than reaching the outstanding level supporters hoped for. Nevertheless, the tour was far from a complete disappointment. The successful return of Hugo Keenan, the unexpected resurgence of Jimmy O'Brien, and the continued competitiveness shown by several experienced campaigners provide reasons for optimism. At the same time, the struggles of established names and the continued search for consistency underline that Ireland remain a team in transition rather than the finished article. For Andy Farrell, the lessons from this nation's championship could prove invaluable. He now knows which players responded positively to adversity, which combinations require further work, and which positions demand fresh competition. The road ahead will undoubtedly present even tougher examinations, but if Ireland can build on the positives while addressing the defensive frailties and missed opportunities exposed during the Southern Series, they will remain firmly among the contenders on the international stage. For now, however, these player ratings tell the story of a talented squad that showed glimpses of excellence but ultimately fell short of fulfilling its considerable potential against the very best opposition.